Approximately 64% of Americans, which is about 212 million people, say that their biggest fear about growing older is dementia.
There are brain changes that happen decades before anyone has signs or symptoms associated with Alzheimer's.
According to the Alzheimer's Association, there are 11 million people providing unpaid care to people with dementia.
One of my first recommendations that's non-negotiable is for you to have 8 continuous hours a week to yourself.
The number of people in the U.S. with Alzheimer's currently is around 6.5 million and is expected to reach 8.5 million by 2030 and 11.2 million by 2040.
45% of worldwide Alzheimer's could be prevented.
What proactive steps can be taken at the first signs of cognitive decline?
I think of Alzheimer's as having kind of 4 steps along the path.
Maybe we could break down some of the most critical lifestyle factors that could contribute to cognitive health.
We can't wait on a miracle drug. The time for us to take responsibility for our own health is now.
Welcome back, Kwik Brains. I am your host and your brain coach, Jim Kwik. There is still a high amount of skepticism around whether Alzheimer's can be reversed. And this is a topic, as many of you know, it's near and dear to my heart, having lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's when I was 7 years old. And, we're so passionate about this. I want to thank you for everyone who supported Limitless. We donated part of those proceeds to Alzheimer's research, particularly for women. Women are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men, yet a lot of the research is done on men and treatments with men. And so in memory of my grandmother, we do that. There's also a growing body of evidence, so I am optimistic, showing that implementing a handful of strategies can improve cognition and quality of life in dementia patients. So our guest today is Dr. Heather Sandison. We are here today to discuss some of the common misconceptions around Alzheimer's and share her approach on how to support your brain health at any age. So this is a very important episode. I encourage you to share it, to be able to post about it, tag us both in the post wherever you're consuming this. Dr. Sandison is a distinguished naturopathic doctor and founder of Solseri. It's a health clinic, and Marama. This is the first residential memory care facility to have the goal of returning cognitively declined residents to independent living. She is the author of the best-selling book, Reversing Alzheimer's, which I highly recommend, the new toolkit to improve cognition and protect brain health. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sandison.
Jim, thanks so much for having me.
I really appreciate your work. As I mentioned at the top of this, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. It's also an emotionally charged topic. Anyone who's been a caregiver and has seen loved ones or somebody going through this experience, maybe we could start with Alzheimer's is often viewed as this inevitable part of aging, but your work really challenges that. What maybe briefly inspired you to take on the task of reversing this condition? And, when maybe we could highlight some of the key findings that have shifted your perspective on cognitive decline.
Yeah, I came to this as a skeptic. As you mentioned, there's a lot of skepticism around this, the fact that Alzheimer's can be reversed, because we're all taught, doctors, when I was in training in naturopathic school, I was told, don't tell anyone there's anything you can do for them if they have Alzheimer's or dementia, because that would be to give them false hope. And now my mentor, Dr. Bredesen, says over and over again, to suggest there's nothing you can do for cognitive decline is to generate false hopelessness. That there is so much that we know we can do today to optimize cognitive function wherever we are on the spectrum of age, on brain age, biological age, chronological age, wherever we are on the cognitive spectrum, we can optimize our brain health. And I think, you speak to this so much, very, very eloquently and with your own personal experience. And I thought, when people start to decline cognitively, age-associated memory loss, dementia, I did not expect to see them get better. And yet, the question I asked myself, you have this exercise in Limitless, like, what is your overarching question? What is the question that you're asking every day? And mine is, how can I be of service? And what
Mm.
I saw in my practice was people with dementia getting better when I didn't believe that that was possible. And I saw it over and over and over again. And I share many of those stories in the book. But when I saw that it was possible to shift the trajectory of someone's cognitive function as they age, when they could go from not being verbal, from using yes or no to maybe answer questions, to speaking in complete sentences, to having a conversation, when they could go from being dependent on others to help them go to the bathroom or to fix a meal, to being able to do those things for themselves, to have that not only that skill back, but that ability to be independent, to have that sense of dignity back. That was when I was like, wow, this is how I can be of service, is I can shout this from the rooftops. I can share this with as many people as possible. I can do some research in my clinical practice. I can create solutions for people that will reduce the suffering associated with this disease.
I got goosebumps when you said that. I call them truth bumps, and I just want to remind everybody that this conversation is obviously not intended to diagnose or to treat any health challenge. Definitely talk to your educated health practitioner. Go to her clinic. Go to San Diego. Read her book. It's funny because there's a difference between a diagnosis of Alzheimer's and a prognosis, right? Telling people what this means. And we know from, people's belief system can definitely affect people's outcomes. I'm curious, one of the challenges that families face is, and I see my parents or family members or just, coaching clients, is identifying early signs of Alzheimer's before it's not too late, because evidently you're not just staving off challenge. You could actually get better, right? What should people maybe be looking out for? What proactive steps can be taken, to at the first signs of cognitive decline?
Really great question, because our confidence is higher the younger someone is and the sooner we intervene on this spectrum of cognitive decline. So I think of Alzheimer's as having kind of four steps along the path, right? There's the earliest signs, you don't even feel them. You aren't even aware that something's happening. And for some people, they actually are not aware that they're having cognitive decline. It takes family members or someone else to point it out. But there are brain changes that happen decades before anyone has signs or symptoms associated with Alzheimer's. And so if we can get genetic testing, if like for you, that your grandmother had Alzheimer's or dementia. And so if you can have genetic testing that you get in your 20s or 30s that helps us understand that you're at higher risk, well, then we can be empowered to reduce all of the known modifiable risk factors. Unmodifiable risk factors are our age, the year we were born. We cannot change that. We cannot change our genetic predisposition. APOE is one of those single nucleotide polymorphisms that can put us at risk for Alzheimer's later in life. We can't change our APOE status. We can't change if we were born male or female. As you mentioned, women are much more likely to suffer from Alzheimer's. We can't change the gender we were born with. So those factors are non-modifiable. But there are tons. The Lancet Commission report on Alzheimer's was published in this summer in June of 2024, and they updated the list from 12 things to 14 modifiable risk factors that have an impact on whether or not we end up with Alzheimer's. And the Lancet, very credible research a journal out of the UK, suggests that 45% of worldwide Alzheimer's could be prevented. So we have a tremendous amount of control about how our brain ages. So in these four stages of Alzheimer's, first, when your brain is changing, but we're not aware of it. The second is subjective cognitive impairment, where we know something's a little different. We could remember that name. We would remember that address. We would remember that grocery shopping list 5 years ago, but we don't anymore. But it's not being picked up on maybe on the scanning or the testing yet, on the cognitive testing. And then the third stage is called mild cognitive impairment. Now, there is nothing mild about this stage. This is where people are losing their job, losing their independence, potentially losing their driver's license. They're losing the ability to interact day to day. They might be repeating questions, but they're able to carry on a conversation. And then as we get into that fourth stage, this is diagnosable Alzheimer's, where they're losing the ability to live independently, maybe to get dressed on their own, toilet, have meaningful conversation and connection with their loved ones. And what we want to do is prevent the progression down that path. Now, I didn't think that we could help people in that full Alzheimer's stage. And yet over and over again, my patients have proven me wrong, that they will get better. But it requires more resources. It requires more labor, more effort from caregivers. It requires more money. It requires just more swallowing more pills and doing more stuff. And it takes more time. And so ideally, what would happen is that everyone would get what my mentor, Dr. Dale Bredesen, calls a cognoscopy, right? So you know that you're supposed to go get a colonoscopy to check to see if you have colon cancer, and then to get rid of it at those earliest stages so that it doesn't become something that kills you. And the idea here is that we look at all the modifiable risk factors, that we systematically go through the different reasons why someone might end up with dementia or Alzheimer's. Things like traumatic brain injuries, sleep apnea, toxic burden, infectious burden, nutrient imbalances, lack of purpose and meaning or social isolation, hearing loss, vision loss, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. These are just some, diabetes, uncontrolled blood sugar. These are just a few of the many, many, many risk factors for developing dementia and Alzheimer's. And when we can know if we have them earlier on, before they're really affecting our brain, then we can do so much about them to optimize them. And by the way, Jim, the side effect of treating all of these things is that you're healthier generally, that life is more fulfilling, your blood sugar is optimized, your blood pressure is optimized, you're getting good exercise, you're engaged in the things that fire you up, you're getting great sleep, you're connected socially. And that's the recipe for living a meaningful life as we age anyways. And you optimize your brain health at the same time.
And what you're running at your clinic, this was later stage. It was stage 3 and stage 4, which is absolutely mind blowing. It gives people real hope, and you're offering people real help. So your book, which I've already gifted to a number of clients, a number of friends, it emphasizes let's say a holistic approach to Alzheimer's prevention and treatment. Maybe we could break down some of the most critical lifestyle factors that could contribute to cognitive health.
Yeah, so the 6 components of brain health is one of the ways that we break it down. Toxins, nutrients, stressors, structure, signaling, and infections. And so if we have imbalances, too much, too little, in the wrong place at the wrong time of any of these things, again, toxins, nutrients, stressors, structure, signaling, and infections. If we've got too much or too little, it's going to dysregulate that homeodynamic balance in our brain. And so what we're looking to do is identify what are the causal level factors for me. Now, from a medical perspective, we might want to run a bunch of tests. But before you even go there or spend the money or look for a doctor trained by Dr. Bredesen, I would recommend starting with the foundations, just those. It's the decisions that we make every day, those small decisions we make every day about what we put in our mouths, about how much activity we get, about how much movement we get, what time we go to bed, the quality of the relationships that we have. Those small decisions that we make every day are what determine the trajectory of our health. And so I would highly recommend starting with diet, exercise, mental engagement and activity, relationships, and sleep. So for diet, I'm a proponent of an organic ketogenic diet, but we saw from Dr. Ornish's work that you don't have to do that. There's multiple diets that you can choose from. And I think that what will play out in the research is that inconsistency, which was consistent in our ancestors, right? None of our ancestors had a consistent diet. You couldn't get blueberries 365 days a year, let alone a Snickers bar, right? And so there were periods of fasting. There were periods of abundance. There were periods when there were carbohydrates available and periods of time when maybe only meat was available. And they went towards more of a carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet. And so we don't have to go to those extremes because we don't live in the days of feast or famine. But what we can do is approximate that by going in and out of ketosis and alternating that with potentially a plant-based diet and eliminating as many processed foods, particularly processed carbohydrates from our diet, because those contribute a lot to the diabetes, the blood sugar dysregulation, the insulin resistance, the high blood pressure that is associated at a causal level of brain degeneration. So from a dietary perspective, avoid processed carbs. Consider getting a continuous glucose monitor. Those are available over the counter now through Stello.com. I think that's a phenomenal tool and a great way to make sure that your blood sugar is optimized. And then second is activity. So I recommend at least 200 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous activity. And the number one brain exercise that I recommend is called dual task exercise, where you're engaging cognitively at the same time as physically. I know you're a proponent of this as well. The simplest form of this is walking and talking. So intellectual conversation while you go for a walk. But even going to classes, ballroom dancing or Zumba or any yoga, Pilates, anything where you are engaged and cued by an instructor and you have to stay present to follow the instructions, that's a great way to do it. Racket sports where you have hand-eye coordination, social engagement. You're probably outside playing. You've got to learn new rules. I love the pickleball craze for this reason. This is a great way to engage cognitively and physically at the same time. And so anytime that you can do that, you're getting more benefit for your brain. And it's also, I'm the queen of efficiency. I love that it's efficient. You can do two things at the same time. You can exercise and engage cognitively and maybe get your social, engage with people you love. So that's diet, exercise. Sleep is another really big one. And sleep, what we see over and over again is that sleep apnea, essentially at night, if you have apnea events, that is mild brain damage every night. And if you have severe sleep apnea, when that's happening night after night after night, you can accumulate amyloid plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease in just one night of sleep deprivation. So when you accumulate this over decades, this is having a real impact on cognition and the structure of your brain. So everyone has access. If you have insurance, you have access to sleep medicine. Everyone with Medicare should have access to a sleep study. And advocating for yourself, and it's a chore. Nobody wants to wear a CPAP. Nobody wants to go for an overnight sleep study. Right. And yet I beg of you, take the time, make the effort, because I have watched people go from single-digit MoCA scores. So the MoCA normal is 26 and above, 30 is perfect. This is the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. And I have had more than one patient in my office go from an 8, a single-digit MoCA score, where they were, diagnosed Alzheimer's, doing really badly, to almost double that. Back in the game, buying gifts, age-appropriate gifts at birthdays and holidays for their grandkids. Like, they are back after being on that rapid decline.
Yeah, this is something that's, again, a personal challenge. I have very obstructive sleep apnea. From 2010 to 2015, I was sleeping maybe 2 hours a night in total. I would stop breathing over 250 times, and each episode was like 10 seconds. And eventually I did a surgery at UCLA by the head of throat, and they did a UPPP, and cut out my uvula, soft palate, tonsils, and my sleep went up to like 4 hours, which is not great, but it's huge improvement, in general. But then I had my family tested, and everyone, parents, siblings, they all have obstructive apnea, and and with just like everybody else, I'm very cognitively engaged and traveling, and I'm hyper aware and sensitive to my cognitive performance, and CPAPs and dental devices. And you're right, absolutely. People don't have to go to a stale clinic, overnight. They get sent by their physician and an overnight sleep study. Just be able to see that, because that's huge. Is there any, I'm just out of personal curiosity, when you sleep, that like sewage system kicks in, potentially clean out the beta-amyloid plaque that lead to brain aging challenges. Mm-hmm. Is there any other way for that to kick in? Is it only sleep?
Deep sleep is the way that you get that lymphatic rinsing. You can have a little bit of like using a pillow and using gravity to help to support that. Of course, avoiding toxins wherever you can so that we don't have an overburden of them to begin with. The brain can get rid of the regular metabolites that we have from cells doing their thing every day. But this might be the most important thing that you hear today on this podcast, is to get a sleep study. Jim, thank you for sharing your personal experience. I've seen it over and over in my clinical practice with the coaching clients that we see, with the residents that live at Marama, that people who have sleep apnea are not going to fire on all cylinders cognitively, and it can be miraculous when we get the right intervention. And wearing a CPAP, as you well know, it can be uncomfortable. Not everybody wants to do it, but making friends with your CPAP or finding that right device, it can be expensive. It can take time. It can be a chore. But please put in the effort because it can be so, so crucial to your cognitive function.
Yeah, my wife feels like it's incredibly attractive. There. But prioritizing sleep, most important. Nothing will help you rebound and recover. And these are great. So you went through diet and nutrition, movement and exercise, sleep. And I had a question about structure and signaling, but please continue.
Yeah. So structure is actually a lot of that is the open airway at night,
Right.
but also making sure blood vessels are open and patent, not having traumatic brain injuries, avoiding traumatic brain injuries, not, getting hit over the head with a baseball bat is going to impact your cognitive function. And we've got that inflammation can trigger the development of amyloid and tau proteins. So activities and engagement, this is so important as well. We need purpose and meaning. Stress is one of these things. Again, it's about balance, not too much, not too little. We need purpose and meaning in our lives. And I highly recommend doing things that are fun. Thinking back, when was I having the best time? Even if it was in your teens, I had a woman who came in as a patient and she and her husband, they hit 60 and he asked her, like, when were you having the most fun? And she said, in my teens when I was riding horses. And so she got another horse. She decided to get back on a horse and she started going to shows and she created this whole, there was the environment of the barn that she loved and caring for the animals that she loved and riding and the skill building that it came with that and the community of other people who were interested in horses. And she loved it and she was having fun and it was good for her brain. And her husband was super supportive. Now, not everybody, that's not for everyone, right? But there are these things like, oh, I used to play the guitar and I haven't done that in years. So going back to those things that you love that kind of get away from us when we're parenting or going through work and looking to achieve the most that we can. Sometimes those hobbies and things that we really enjoy start to fall through the cracks. And so consciously bringing that back as we age is, I think, a really fun way to create and generate purpose and meaning. But it also might be through family, grandkids. Now, the flip side of this is caregivers who are under a tremendous amount of burden, physically, emotionally, financially. This can affect their sleep, their ability to care for themselves, eat well, exercise. That increases, being a caregiver for someone with dementia increases your risk of developing dementia and becoming the patient later in life by anywhere from 2.5 to 6 times.
And I love that you're bringing this up because we don't often talk about caregivers, but it's an important part, of Alzheimer's treatment. Maybe you can give a few suggestions for those listening that have somebody in their life that they're supporting on how to build and maintain a balanced relationship and make sure that both sides don't burn out. Are you tired and frustrated of struggling with forgetfulness and longing for greater mental retention and clarity? I have a special invitation for you to watch my free 3-part memory power video training where you'll discover the secrets to effortlessly recall crucial information, details, experiences, remembering what you read, giving a speech without notes, and remembering names, transforming you into an exceptional mental achiever. You'll also discover 10 powerful ingredients to supercharge your brain. So don't miss out on this life-changing opportunity. Simply click the button or go to jimkwik.com/power.
Absolutely. This is such a crucial component. You mentioned there's 11 million unpaid caregivers right now in the United States today. And you might be one or might know somebody who is one. And one of my first recommendations that's non-negotiable is for you to have 8 continuous hours a week to yourself, where you don't go care for grandkids, you don't talk about dementia, you care for yourself, you engage in your hobbies, your activities, you talk to your friends, and you get a break, you get to recharge. And that's important for a couple of reasons. One, because you can't serve from an empty vessel, right? If you are depleted, you won't be the best potential caregiver. And number 2 is because it's so heartbreaking to see families end up in a desperate situation where they haven't figured out another care partner. And this is not a one-person job. This is way more than full-time. This is not a 40-hour-a-week thing. This is not an 80-hour-a-week thing. This can become a 24-hour-a-day, 7 days a week, for many. I have a 5-year-old. I know you have kids. I know that my 5-year-old is going to become more and more independent. When you have a family member or loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia, you don't know if this is going to last 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. You don't know how soon it's going to get worse and when you're going to need extra help. But inevitably, even if we can get some people better, we can't avoid death. We can't avoid aging. There is decline that ends up happening, and taking care of someone in that position requires effort and time and physical endurance. And so having another person to help who knows your loved one, who knows their likes and dislikes and preferences and what their routines are, that is really beneficial. And you want to get that before you think you need it, because eventually it's going to come up and you're going to need it. And I know that there's guilt and feelings of like, I'm the only one that can take care of my loved one and
Right.
I'm the only one that knows them well enough. But it is so important to have that other person there, because I've seen too many people where the caregiver ends up with a medical issue or they get called away to help another loved one and they're not able to care for their loved one with dementia. And then they're left with a warm body who is definitely not going to know and care for your loved one the same way that somebody who's trained well. So getting that help early on, so crucially important. And then doing everything with them. The book that I wrote, Reversing Alzheimer's, came out of our coaching for caregivers. And when you are thinking about an organic ketogenic diet for your loved one with dementia, do it for you too. Get into that together. If you're getting that sleep study scheduled, get one for you too.
Right.
If you're thinking about movement for your loved one, how can you create an activity for them where you can get movement and exercise at the same time? Make sure that you're applying this to yourself as well as a caregiver.
And that's good, because I feel like a lot of our listeners, by saying this, they feel seen. Because often when people are going through these kind of challenges, again, their full focus is on their loved one or the person that they, were chartered to be able to care for. But I feel like you're giving people permission to take care of themselves also. And doing it together is also that, because you talked about nutrition, you talk about movement, you talk about sleep, is that also that social aspect, that relationship, which is so very vital.
Yeah, and you want to have an identity outside of caregiver, right? You need to have yourself so that when that person passes, potentially, you're not left with nothing. There can be this depression afterwards when you lose that sense of purpose and meaning around that person. You want to have more than that going on to prepare yourself. There's so many things that we could talk about for caregivers. Connection over correction. Often when we're caring for someone, whether it's a child or an adult with dementia, it's really tempting to say like, hey, you got that wrong. And like, if someone says, I had breakfast with my mom this morning and mom's been dead for 20 years, it's easy to be like, no, you didn't. But when you move into their world, when you start to meet them where they are, when you say, oh, what did you have for breakfast with mom? And describe it, and what were the flavors, and what was the texture, and where did you sit, and what did she say? When you kind of connect instead of correct, when you do connect instead of correct, you amplify the ability to get into a rest, digest, and heal state. So instead of having someone in the defensive or grieving their mom again, you can put them in a state where they're engaged in their senses and you're genuinely curious about their experience. And that just allows for a totally different experience for our nervous system, both as a caregiver and as a patient.
Can connect over correct. I love that. And that could be a mantra for people outside of caregiving, just being a human with human relationships. What would you say, besides getting your book and visiting your clinic and your facility, which we'll put all of the links in the show notes always at jimkwik.com/notes, where we summarize the conversation. I highly recommend everyone go there and connect to find out more. What would you say are, let's say, 3 of the most important things people should discuss with their healthcare practitioner or provider when putting together a treatment or prevention plan?
Yeah, so asking about a cognoscopy, have we thoroughly evaluated all of my risk factors when it comes to developing Alzheimer's or dementia? That is number one. I think for caregivers out there, if you are considering looking at memory care or assisted living or independent living, kind of whatever the sequence is for your loved one who is aging, senior living, it's really important to ask whoever you're talking to there, do you provide a brain healthy diet? Do you have brain engaging activities? Is there exercise equipment and exercise classes available to keep my loved one active? What is the environment set up like? Is it easy to just be isolated, or is it set up so that it's easy to socialize? Touring and asking those questions will let the facilities know, these communities know that you are really interested and you value a brain engaging environment, diet, and activity, a calendar for your loved one. And that will shift what they make available. And then I think the other big piece is a shift in responsibility, right? As we age, it's not about kicking our feet up. It's not about, having happy hour in our retirement. I think that's really outdated. It's about taking responsibility for our health. We know that our healthcare system is not going to do it for us. We know that it can be extremely expensive to age. And so taking that responsibility that I need to get exercise, I need to show up and engage with my friends, I need to be active and engaged cognitively, I need to eat well. Those things are our responsibility as we age. And that's really a shift from like, okay, I'm going to kick back. The science will save me. I'll get a pill that I can take. My doctor will tell me what to do or write me the prescription and healthcare will take care of me. I think that we've proven that that's not the case. We can't wait on a miracle drug. The time for us to take responsibility for our own health is now.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And then just even thinking about activity, I would encourage, and connection is a wonderful opportunity. I like the walk and talk. I'm new to pickleball, so racket sports. Of course, I do martial arts every morning at 8 a.m. So that's kind of my go-to, where I can put my mind into my muscle. And we talk about as your body moves, your brain grooves. And table tennis is something. We have an annual Brain Power Conference. The next one will be March 6th, 7th, and 8th in Los Angeles, and it's an amazing event, 3-day event. But we set up in the past, we've set up all these ping pong tables where people could, during the breaks, socialize and engage, but also get some, get some movement in also as well. Do you play any racket sports yourself?
I have the worst hand-eye coordination of anyone you've ever met. Do not pick me for your team if we end up playing ping pong together. But it's so fun still. Even though I'm not very good at it, I have a great time. And it's what my brain needs. Leaning into those things that are more challenging for us helps to expand and build those synapses and those connections in the area of our brain that potentially has a deficit. So we often say to people, if you struggle with math, lean into the numbers. If you struggle with language, lean into the language. That's where you want to build, like you want to do those bicep curls for that part of your brain. So I appreciate you put on such great events. They're always so fun and engaging.
And it also falls on International Women's Day. And so we're going to do a special that day with our amazing female speakers and presenters, showing how people could change their brain and change their life and change their entire world.
Amazing.
I could talk to you for hours, and I just want to thank you for the work that you do. It's very clear from our conversation, I hope everyone could feel that there is so much hope for those who are facing cognitive decline, or if you have a loved one who's going through that. And that with the right holistic approach, you can not only prevent, but potentially even reverse those conditions. And so I love that the work that you're doing. We'll definitely send you, clients and people that can really benefit. How do people stay in touch with you?
drheathersandison.com. My last name is spelled Sandison. Mm-hmm. And you can sign up for our newsletter where we're constantly sharing about the newest science, about considerations for caregivers, for those suffering with dementia, and those who are looking to prevent it altogether. We've got lots of engaging information, and I'm happy to have you join our list there.
That's amazing. We'll put a link to your website, which will include also, your clinic, your facility, social media also as well.
You can find us on social media, Dr.Heather at Instagram, Dr. Heather Sandison on Facebook. Yeah, if you put my name in there, I'm all over the interwebs.
Perfect. And I highly recommend, if you want to go deeper into her work, get a copy of the book, Reversing Alzheimer's, available wherever books are sold. So thank you so much again, Heather, for being on the show. I hope it works out where we can be together for our annual Brain Power Conference. It's called Limitless Live, and we're going to have a lot of fun there. As always, you can find out, more ways to fuel your brain's potential on our YouTube channel. You could join 1.7 million subscribers there, where we post also the extended version of these episodes. So if you're listening to this on audio on Spotify or iTunes, we limit it to 20 minutes so you could binge listen. But this episode went longer than that, so we'll put the extended version on our YouTube there. And make sure you follow us both. Follow Dr. Sandison on Instagram and other social media channels. Me, I'm at Jim Kwik. And make sure you hit the subscribe button and leave a comment under this episode with your thoughts. And so this is your brain coach, Jim Kwik. Until next time, remember to be limitless.